Hey everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore the role of food choices in the healing process. Here to help us do that is Joey Pollaro, a health and wellness coach specializing in mind, body, and soul integration. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others, as well as our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for new content as it becomes available. Please also check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some free resources as you begin your health journey. Joey Pollaro, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited. This is my first podcast, and I'm hoping to be able to be of service to your audience and tell my story of my experience of transformation. And if one person today comes away from this podcast with a little bit of hope that wasn't there before, I think I've done my job. The Food Experience podcast. I have a lot of experience with food, both killing myself with food and destroying my health, as well as healing myself with food and transforming myself into a healthy, robust person.
Well, that is amazing. And we are here to talk about your story and, more importantly, how people can use food, how food choices contribute to the healing process, and regardless of what you're going through. But to start out, will you introduce yourself? And you've undergone your own transformation of a lot of different things. So will you share a little bit about that and what brought you to this point in your life and your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, what I do is I'm a coach. I'm a health and wellness coach. I help people to take back control of their lives, specifically people in recovery, um, who want to take their programs over recovery to the next level and to supplement their recovery from any type of addiction, and to make it to design to discover who they are and to design the person they want to be. And food plays a gigantic part in that for me. My How I got to this point is is I for I'm an alcoholic and I'm a drug addict. And for 2 decades I had hit many bottoms and drew lots of lines in the sand and crossed every one of them, and over the course of 2 decades suffered most consequences short of death and long-term prison. And I finally had hit a bottom where I just couldn't live the way I was living anymore. And by way of part divine intervention, part tough love, and just being defeated, on August 20th, 2009, I got the opportunity to get clean and sober. And somehow was blessed with willingness to do the work in order to not only get sober but stay sober, and not only stay sober but live a full life filled with good relationships and good health and purpose and meaning. And so I got into recovery on August 20th, 2009, like I mentioned. And I won't get too far into the gory details of my addiction, but I don't think there's anybody who isn't touched by it in one form or another. And unfortunately, most people like me end up dead in jail or institution, and don't even get an opportunity to recover, let alone live a life of contribution. Um, I didn't get well right away. When I got off of alcohol and drugs, um, I entered a 12-step program, and I took direction. I did all the hard work, and I got a lot sicker before I got better. Depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation plagued me 24 hours a day. And I turned to food and essentially switching addictions. And I abused food and abused my body for 5 or 6 years, and I went from 230 pounds on I was 230 pounds on August 20th, 2009, and I by the time I hit another bottom, which was March 1st, 2015. I remember the date because I woke up like knowing that I can't live this way anymore, and that I was going to commit to taking back my health and taking back my life. At that point, I was an obese 415 pounds, and since March 1st, 2015, I've um, my entire life has transformed, and I've today I'm 230 pounds, and without any type of pills or medical intervention, and slowly creeping towards my ideal weight, and personally feel better than I ever have in my entire life. Um, Food choices play a gigantic part in that, and I, you know, I'm a believer that like all eating programs work, no matter what they are. It's just which eating program am I going to be able to stick to without feeling deprived? So I tried them all. I tried them all, and I tend to follow the guidelines of what not to eat as opposed to what to eat. And so the way this journey started was like any good habit starts is really, really, really small. My daily routine started with just ensuring that I was hydrated, walking 10 minutes a day, um, meditation. Um, it was really important to take control of my internal mental and emotional hygiene. So no negative self talk, no exceptions. And in the evenings, not eating past 8 p.m. and writing down three things I did well at night and three things that I'm grateful for. And that was it. Started there, and I did that for a couple months, and none of it perfectly, until I started to build some momentum and some consistency. And I added to that very slowly. Um, you know, I, the big game changer for me was when I cut out sugar. When I cut out sugar, I had no idea that I was addicted to sugar. It's when I cut out sugar, everything became so much easier for me. And so I tend to follow a diet that is I avoid most foods that have inflammation in it. So I actually started it with, once I started to build some momentum after a couple months. I did a 10-day water fast, which reset my brain, my body. Not straight water. For 10 days, I drank a concoction with that was distilled water, fresh squeezed lemons, aloe vera juice, a serving of plant derived trace minerals, and maple syrup every 2 hours. Every hour I was awake. And, you know, I was very surprised that like my entire system got purged, all the toxins in my body through, all the poor food choices, and even the decades of poisoning myself with alcohol and drugs all came out of my body. And I, I, I ended up losing 20 pounds and keeping it off. So I try to avoid, um, it's different for everybody. I mean, personally, I stay away from dairy. I stay away from wheat. I stay away from most things that turn to sugar, soy, um, any most type of flour products. And I seem to, when I'm doing that, I'm able to avoid cravings and make healthy food choices most of the time. I think it's really important um, for me to make it easy on myself. I don't spend a ton of time preparing meals. Um, I like to, eat a lot of vegetables, eat a lot of lean protein. Um, I eat a lot of fruit and seeds and healthy fats, avocados, things of that nature. And And if I stick to that, if I stick to those don'ts, everything else seems to fall into place.
Wow, that is amazing. I love your just over the years, your dedication, your focus to kind of dissect your experiences a little bit. But what was your relationship with food? I know with, drug and alcohol dependency, food doesn't necessarily even play much of a role, but maybe from the time you got clean and with from the drugs and alcohol, what was your relationship with food at that time? How has it changed over time, over the course of these years?
Everything has changed. I think really what I was using food to like fill a hole in my soul. Um, I I would just eat and eat and eat, and I was I was doing the same thing with food that I was doing with alcohol and drugs, and that's trying to avoid looking inside. Um, my my relationship with food, my entire life was I had never been overweight before. I was an athlete, and although I really didn't pay too close attention of being super healthy all the time, um, this was a new experience for me. When I didn't expect that I would turn to food for comfort. So it really turned into like from a comfort thing to today. It's a fuel and an energy thing and a medicine thing. Everything that we put into our bodies plays a huge part in being a healthy, functioning human being. Um, there's health equals function, and there's four pillars, so to speak, of good health, and they're um, physical and physiological, um,
Mhm.
cognitive and behavioral, metabolical and psychological. And food is vital for all those four things. It's what drives them all. So it's so important. I really focus a lot on brain health. Um, I've done a lot of damage to my brain over the years, and I think energy is the number one predictor for succeeding in anything and feeling good. And the brain is what 2% of our body weight and uses 20% of our energy. So when I'm deciding of what to put into my body, what supplements to take, what nutrients to take, um, I always take in consideration like what's going to be the best thing for my brain.
Mhm. Okay. And then with the other aspects of the four pillars, is most of the time when we think of food, you think of the physical types of things. But you mentioned,
Mhm.
with the other pillars, how do you feel that food is playing a role in the pillars that you spoke with?
Well, I mean, for me, like I'm really sensitive to food. So if I'm not eating healthy foods, my like I'm not going to think clearly. My emotions are going to be all over the place. If I put sugar in my body, I'm really messed up. It has such a strong effect on me. As far as like metabolical, like how my metabolism is has everything to do with the food that I'm putting into my body. Psychological, same way. Like when I'm eating unhealthy foods, um, definitely prone to anxiety and depression and things of that nature. So it's it's vital to me.
That's awesome. So that, how do you feel that you got clean from the drugs and alcohol, then you're battling the food. How do you feel that food contributed to that decision? Or I guess you were kind of abusing the food you mentioned. Um, but how is that vital to really turning your life around, if that
Well, I
makes
think it
sense?
had to start there. I think it had to start. It had to start there for me. I had to switch my mindset of what food was doing for me. I was using it to kill pain, and today I use it for fuel and energy. Um, it has absolutely everything to do with it. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
That's no, that's good. That's just kind of that mental transition, that refocusing on food, I think is amazing how you were able to do that, and that, kind of drove your decisions, drove your food choices, drove your health choices. So that's super, super amazing. Now, did that you mentioned with 2015 you started really transitioning health wise. Did you have other things, other wellness regimens that you focused on, or was it mainly a food choices type of situation?
No, I think it was it. Food was the start. So I mentioned the brain and energy, and so healthy food choices were first. I think the second thing that I focused on was my thinking. My negative thinking. They say that humans have 80% of their thoughts are negative, and 90% of those thoughts are repetitive. Um, so that's a really tough situation. It has nothing to do with being an alcoholic or a drug addict or a food addict. It has everything to do with just being a human. It's evolutionary biology. That negativity bias is in place. Um, was in place ever since humans existed to protect us, and it doesn't anymore. So the negative thinking, for me to flip my negative thinking, was super important. My mindset, and that's why I mentioned earlier, the no negative self talk, no exceptions. The number one tool I use to to avoid negative thinking and is gratitude. So a gratitude practice was huge for me. That what that looks like, it could be a spot check of gratitude, where throughout the day I'll just stop for a minute and breathe, and just start thinking of all the things that I'm grateful for. And I don't necessarily feel grateful all the time, but I believe that the practice of gratitude generates gratitude, and that's the best thing I could do for my negative thinking. The third thing would be exercise. Exercise is super important. At 415 pounds, I started really small. I started by walking. I walked for 10 minutes. I added some yoga. Most important thing was for me to be consistent. So I started really small. I put a habit in place that was tiny and impossible to fail, and I just did it over and over and over again. The next thing would be brain nutrients. Um, DHA, omega 3s, B, C, zinc, folate. I started supplementing with that. I started supplementing with collagen. Um, the, the next important thing I think would be a healthy peer group, surrounding myself with people living a healthy lifestyle. I think that that's vital for me. Um, is to be around people who prioritize exercise, who prioritize healthy eating, who prioritize healthy mindset and are positive. Um, the next thing for me would be um, always be learning, to have variety in my life and to be immersed in in something new all the time. That really stimulates me and keeps me from ruminating and getting into negative thinking. Um, Sleep, I had to learn to prioritize my sleep. Um, I think that that's a huge part into living a healthy life. My sleep, when I was eating unhealthy and I was piling on weight, I barely slept. I would wake up in the middle of the night with heartburn and with anxiety and racing thoughts. There was a period of time where I was literally launching myself out of bed at night. I would wake up when I hit the floor. Um, that that So that plays a huge part in it. Um, Another thing would be stress management. Um, Meditation is something that I have a consistent meditation practice. Um, Again, if you're looking to implement meditation in your life, start super small. For a long time, I studied meditation, and there's a ton of information out there about the benefits of meditation, and it could be overwhelming at times. And when clients come to me, a lot of their um, most of the time, a common thread between the issues they're having has to do with stress and overwhelm, and anxiety. And so what I'd like to do is to teach them to meditate and try to get them to build a consistent meditation practice. And almost all the time, I'm met with a level of resistance of the idea that they feel like they can't meditate, or they're not good at it, or they don't know how to do it, or they don't have the time to sit for long periods of time. And I like to break it down really, really, really simple. Like, there's two kinds of meditation. There's the kind of meditation that you do, and the kind of meditation that you don't do. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. So when I started my meditation practice, it was really, really small. I started with like that 3 times during a day, I would stop and take 3 very deep conscious breaths. I would try to do it in the same place at the same time every day to try to make it an ingrained habit. So those are some of the things I think that also contributes to good health.
Okay. Now, with regard to, well, really all of them, but was it a trial and case of trial and error over time? Understanding what foods to eat or not to eat, or focusing on that, and then with the meditation, with the associating with uplifting people types of things. Was it a, pretty straightforward transition, or did it take a little bit of time to really hone in on what's going to work for you?
Oh, it took a lot of time. There was a lot of false starts. A lot of trial and error. A lot of failures. Um, a lot of different types of eating plans to find the one that worked for me. Um, a lot of different type of exercise plans to find the one that worked for me. Um, it took me a few years to get into a groove where I knew what I needed to do on a daily basis to stay healthy. Um, so yeah, it's like I was mentioning before. That I don't think there's an eating plan that's out there that doesn't necessarily work. It's finding out the one that works for you, the one that you're actually going to stick to without being like feelings of deprivation. So my eating is I mentioned that I stay away from most foods that are inflammatory to me, and how I tested that was with an elimination diet. I took all the foods that cause inflammation, and I didn't touch them for 30 days. And then I implemented one at a time. I would implement, let's just say, was one of the things that I didn't eat. Wheat was one of the things that I didn't eat. Soy was one of the things that I didn't eat. Um, Dairy. Did I say dairy? Dairy is one of the things I didn't eat. And then I slowly, I would introduce them. I'd come off the 30 days and I'd introduce, say, legumes, and I would see how my body would feel. And then I'd pull it right back out, and after a day or two, I would see how my body would feel, and I would test each one like that. And what I found is that pretty much all the things in that list not only make mess with my cravings, but actually put me in physical pain. Um, I also have Lyme disease, and so keeping my inflammation down is super important. Um, so I found that, like, with my exercise, I keep it really short, and I make sure that I can do it consistently every day. So I do something called the 5 Tibetan Rites, which is um, a series of 5 different movements that you do 21 repetitions of each, and that's been something that I haven't missed in over 5 years, and I can do it in under 30 minutes, and I can do it in my apartment. Um, I can always, you know, when the gyms were open, I went to the gym. I try to hike, get outside into the mountains out in nature and hike as much as I can. But those baseline things are always in place. And I need to be able to do it no matter where I am, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter what's on my plate. I got to be able to fit that in.
Mm, absolutely. So just kind of including making sure those habits are consistent. So, absolutely. Now, what you when you're you're working with clients, things like that. I mean, you've tried so many different with the diets and different meditations and other things. So, really, is there any situation that a client has that you haven't been through yourself?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I think anytime I work with a client, I try to first and foremost really truly understand them and take the
Mhm.
time to know um, exactly where they are in their life, what it is that they've tried before or haven't tried, to get some clarity around what it is that they're trying to achieve and where they want to go, and that's on an individual basis. The next thing I would do is try to identify what their strengths are and what their values are and their virtues are. The next thing I would try to understand is, what's in the way, like what do they see as obstacles, so, like, um, and exactly where it is they want to go and why it's important to them.
Mhm.
And then I'll just design a system for them that they can implement in their life and do it, and to break it down into small steps and add a little by to little to a little bit to a little bit to a little bit, and be willing to, you know adapt and be malleable to fit their needs, whatever it is. So each person I have to deal with individually, because not what works for me, it's the same thing with sobriety. Like, what works for me and how I stay sober might get somebody else drunk. Like, what I do to stay healthy and mentally, emotionally, and physically and spiritually might not work for you. So I think it's a trial and error process. But if I think there's some fundamentals you know that we could start with that are essentially universal and go from there.
Okay, absolutely. And just really understanding, I mean, coming in, they likely know your story or in your conversation with them that they will know your story and your background. So that's wonderful that you're contributing. These were my experiences. Here's and that kind of helps you relate a little bit better to their situation, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there's one thing to understand intellectually, what it takes to meet your health goals, or to, live a fulfilled life. Um, for me, like, it's the fact that I have personal experience, that I've walked the path that they're trying to walk, and I've come up against most of the obstacles and challenges, and I've done the trial and error, and I've failed over and over and over again, and I've, voraciously studied, anything that has to do with why people do what they do and how to optimize your life. I think I'm able to take that that knowledge and wisdom and experience, and, you know distill it down and be able to transfer that information to them, basically decades of personal experience in a very short amount of time. So it definitely helps.
Mm, okay. And now, with regard to as you were, understanding, what foods, what eating habits work for you, how, what skills do you feel that you acquired during that time, and how have those skills, with regard to your food choices, how has it helped in other aspects of your life? You think?
um, like I mentioned before, it's the the most important thing to me, and I think, you, you know vital for to succeed at anything, is my energy levels, and that is largely driven by what it is I'm putting into my body, the fuel that I'm putting into my body. So it affects all aspects of my life. It affects my work life. It affects my relationships. Not only with my relationship with myself and my body, but relationships with my higher power, my relationships with my family, my relationships to the community. Um, so food for me is the first step. Like if I'm not eating healthy, I don't have the energy to show up.
Mhm. Okay. That's kind of the basic building block, so to speak. So
I think
excellent.
so. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Now, what are some first steps that people can take if they're trying to really use food and wellness to meet their health goals, or if they're trying to overcome an ailment of some kind? What are some
Mhm.
first steps people can take to start that off?
Like I would suggest starting really small. Um, it could be not eating past 8 p.m. and just start there and try to do that consistently for a little bit. And when you're able to do it consistently, add a little something else. It's like I mentioned earlier, the sugar thing was huge for me. When I removed the sugar off the menu, everything else became a lot smoother. So um, I would suggest like paying really close attention to your hydration and the amount of water that you're drinking. I would suggest like if you want looking to implement a an exercise program, to start with walking 5 minutes a day. Um, if I really suggest that elimination diet. It's really hard to make any um, definite suggestions because aside from the basics of that we all know about, like it's always better to avoid sugar. It's always better to um, eat a lot of vegetables and to you know eat high quality meats, healthy fats. Each particular food affects each body in a different way. So I think the
Mhm.
only way to get a baseline for that is to like remove any foods that cause inflammation and then put them back into your diet one at a time and see how you feel. See how it affects your energy. See how it affects your sleep. See how it affects cravings and how you're thinking about food and just to do it a little at a time.
Okay. Absolutely. So that's excellent. I love just kind of gradual and sparking your curiosity, if nothing else, is for how you're helping yourself and how you're moving forward. And
Another important thing for me is that I had to learn is to be more mindful when I'm eating. That's basically my biggest challenge. I'm all about, okay, I'm going to eat this food. I'm going to get my fuel so I can go do all the important things that I need to do. And I started by slowing down. I'm learning to try to start to slow down a little bit to think about the food, to think of how it was grown, or how many people had to contribute in order to get this food onto my table, to really look at the colors and take in the smells and to eat a bite at a time and chew it a lot more. And when I do that, I enjoy it a lot more and I actually get more energy from it. So mindful eating is something that where I struggle, and I'm trying to implement that into my life more. And when I do, I notice that first off, full way sooner than I think I'm full, and I don't need as much food as I think I need, and that I don't know. I just feel I just really feel the benefits of it and how important that it is when I'm paying really close attention to it while I'm doing it.
I love that. That's fantastic that you've got that focus, that um, control, if you will, over, okay, here's how I'm feeling, here's the fuel I'm going to put into my body right now, and just kind of really seeing the benefits of it, seeing the good effects, and the either less eating or staying hydrated. I love your focus and your drive toward understanding your body and understanding what it needs. So now, Joey, how can people get in contact with you if they want to know more
Um,
information?
I mean, they can look me up on LinkedIn. They can go to my website, which is www.efficacycoach.com. That's EFFICACY.com, and that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. So we will include that in the show notes. And
Awesome.
Joey, it's been a pleasure. I love the story of your own transformation and how really you've paid that forward and you're able to really relate to your clients and relate to people and really help to spark their own transformation. That's super, super important. And I really appreciate you taking time today to be on our show.
Oh, it was a good experience. It was definitely, like I said, this was my first podcast, and I was super nervous. And I really just wanted to focus on seeing what I could do in hopes that I could add some value to someone's life, and that somebody who is in a position where they feel like their eating's out of control, their weight's they're out of control, that their life's out of control, that it is possible to put the brakes on and turn the car into the other direction and very slowly climb out and grow.
Sure, absolutely. So we are sure grateful that you were able to grow and now you're able to help your clients too as well. So thank you so much, Joey.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.